They said there was once a city that breathed with the desert wind. Before the dunes swallowed its walls, before the sun burned its memory into silence, there were streets of clay and water that shimmered beneath an endless sky. No one remembers its true name, only that the people called it the place where the sand listens. The elders told that when the world was young, the desert was a sea. The sand had not yet risen, and rivers wound like silver serpents through valleys of green. Along one of these rivers, the first dwellers of the south came to rest. They carried baskets woven of reeds, seeds of maize, and the bones of their ancestors. They built their homes from earth and fire, shaping the mud with bare hands, speaking prayers into every wall. They lived close to the earth. Each dawn, the women scattered cornmeal to greet the sun. Each dusk, the men lifted their eyes to the red horizon, thanking the spirits for another day without dust storms or death. They believed the sun was alive, a god that rose from the underworld each morning, crossed the sky, and sank again to feed the roots of the world. In those early days, the city grew not from conquest, but from faith. The people raised mounds of sand and stone as offerings, believing that if their temples reached the heavens, the sun would see them and bless them with rain. Year by year, the walls climbed higher. Children were born. Harvests filled granaries, and the air smelled of wet clay after summer storms. But the desert has its own hunger. The first wind came without warning. It carried the taste of distant drought. The rivers grew thin, whispering under the heat. The priests said the sun was angry, that the offerings had been forgotten. So they gathered at the great plaza, a sea of white paint on brown skin, and offered songs, feathers, and blood. They promised the sun that if it returned with rain, they would never again let their hearths grow cold. Yet the sky remained clear, and the sand began to move. The people did not flee. They dug deeper wells and built higher walls. They carved canals to catch what little rain fell, and prayed harder. The desert watched, patient and eternal. Night after night, the wind piled grains against the city's edges, soft as the breath of time. The oldest among them spoke of omens, of stars that no longer moved, of animals that fled the valleys. The children laughed, chasing lizards across the empty streets, but even their laughter sounded dry. When the first roofs collapsed under the weight of dust, the people rebuilt. When the last riverbed cracked into silence, they still believed. They carried water in jars for miles, trading jewels for drops. The priests said salvation lay beneath the sand, that if the people could dig deep enough, they would find the veins of the world, the hidden sea that fed all life. And so they dug. Day after day, under a sun that did not forgive, they lowered themselves into the earth. The wind filled their tracks as quickly as they made them. It was as if the desert did not wish to be pierced. Still, they worked. Some said they reached caverns where the air shimmered blue. Others said they struck only rock. The truth was buried with them, under shifting dunes that devoured every sound except the whisper of the wind. Generations passed. The children of the builders forgot the faces of their ancestors. The sand crept over rooftops, over temples, over the plaza, where the first songs had been sung. Soon only the tallest towers remained above the waves of dust, and even those sank slowly, swallowed by centuries. Yet in the hearts of a few, the memory lived on. They told stories of a golden age, of gardens and laughter. They said the city still breathed below, dreaming beneath its blanket of sand. On some nights when the wind was right, one could hear drums echoing through the dunes, faint as heartbeat. But memory is a stubborn thing. It clings to stone, to bone, to the hollowed shells of seeds buried in forgotten granaries. Even when the city was gone, its spirit whispered through the dunes. Travelers who crossed that part of the desert told of odd patterns in the wind, spirals that circled invisible walls, melodies that rose and faded without a flute. Centuries later, nomads came upon the place. They camped at the foot of a ridge that moved like a sleeping beast and found shards of pottery beneath their feet. Some carried the fragments home, tracing the painted lines of suns and waves. They said the shards were warm even at night, as if holding the last heat of an ancient hearth. One of the nomads, an old woman with eyes like rain clouds, listened to the dunes. She said the sand was breathing. Her companions laughed, but she pressed her ear to the ground and swore she heard voices, the sound of footsteps, the rhythm of drums far below. The others grew uneasy. They moved their camp, leaving offerings of maize and shells behind. Generations turned like seasons. The story of the buried city spread across the lands, a place cursed by the sun, a city that refused to die. Merchants told tales of ghosts that guarded gold. Shamans spoke of a door beneath the earth that opened only when the moon was dark. Some came seeking treasure, others seeking proof. The desert welcomed all and kept all. One year, a group of wanderers followed the wind to that same ridge. They dug where the air shimmered and uncovered the top of a stone arch. The carvings were worn smooth, but a few lines remained, spirals and eyes, the marks of a people who had worshipped the horizon. The wanderers built fires and watched the flames dance on the sand, their shadows flickering like those of the lost inhabitants. They felt the ground hum under their feet and knew they stood on something alive. The more they dug, the more the dunes collapsed around them, as though the earth itself was reclaiming its secrets. At dawn, they covered the site and left, carrying nothing but awe. None returned. Yet every few decades, others found the same ridge, and the story was retold. It changed with each telling. In one version, the city had been a kingdom of light destroyed by arrogance. In another, it was a sanctuary swallowed by the gods to protect it from war. But in every version, the city still lived, waiting. And so the legend grew, stretching from tribe to tribe, valley to valley, until it became less a place and more a question whispered by the wind. What happens to those who love the earth so much that they become part of it? Over time, even the storytellers forgot where the ridge lay. The desert shifted again, reshaping itself into new dunes, new silence. But on some nights, when the air is clear and the stars burn cold, travelers still claim they hear it, the sigh of the city beneath the sand, breathing softly in its sleep. The desert forgets nothing. Every grain holds the shadow of something that once was. Ashes, tears, fragments of prayer. Time only rearranges them. Long after the last name of the buried city had vanished from every tongue, the wind still traced its map across the dunes. The pattern changed each night, a curve like a doorway, a straight line like a wall, a hollow where the plaza once stood. The desert was not erasing. It was remembering in its own slow language. Some say that the spirits of those who built the city never left. They lie just beneath the surface, turning with the seasons, whispering through sandstorms. When lightning strikes the dunes, the air fills with a scent like rain on clay. And for a heartbeat, the old city glows beneath the ground, its walls outlined in fire before darkness closes again. The wanderers who have seen this do not return unchanged. They walk differently, softer, as though the earth were fragile. They speak less, as though words might wake something sleeping beneath their feet. One of them, an old man who had crossed the desert 100 times, said that when he stood on the ridge one night, the wind stopped. For the first time in his life, the desert was silent. Then he heard a single sound, faint and distant, the crackle of a fire being fed with new wood. He wept because he understood. The city still burned its eternal hearth. Maybe it was never meant to be found. Maybe the city's disappearance was its salvation, a way of returning to the womb of the world, away from drought and war, away from human forgetfulness. Beneath the sand, it could dream forever, untouched by time. The legends say that the people of the buried city believed death was not an ending, but a deep sleep from which the soul would rise with the dawn. If that was true, then their city did not die. It merely closed its eyes, waiting for the day when the sun, tired of burning alone in the sky, would descend and wake it once more. And perhaps that is why, even now, travelers are drawn to that emptiness. They come for reasons they cannot name. They stand on the dunes at dusk and feel the wind press against them like the breath of something alive. They hear the sand moving under their boots and think it is their imagination. But if they listen long enough, they feel a rhythm, slow and steady, the heartbeat of the buried city still counting the centuries. When the moon rises full, casting silver light across the desert, the dunes look like waves frozen in time. Somewhere beneath them lies the city, whole in its silence. The wind moves across it, shaping and reshaping the hills, and every gust is a whisper of memory, of children's laughter, of water flowing through canals, of songs to a sun that has long since burned its name away. So the story ends where it began, with the desert breathing. The city beneath the sand waits, dreaming, and the world above walks on, never knowing that every step stirs the dust of its own forgotten prayers.